The jungle was alive. The sounds of the dense trees, the rustling of leaves, and the distant calls of wild animals filled the air. But amidst the natural chaos, one sound stood out: the soft footsteps of a human. He moved swiftly through the thick undergrowth, his sharp eyes scanning every inch of the environment around him. His name was Kai, and he had been here for a week, hunting a predator unlike any he had faced before. For the past 7 days, he had been stalked by a huntress, an alien from another world. Her name was Zira, and she was a warrior, skilled in the art of the hunt. She was no ordinary being. Her eyes glowed with a golden light, and her skin shimmered under the sunlight, as though she was part of the jungle itself. She moved with the grace of a panther, and her senses were far beyond those of any human. For Zira, this jungle was her playground, but for Kai, it was a deadly challenge. Zira had been watching him since he first entered the jungle. She had seen him stumble, heard his breath grow heavier with each passing day, and she knew the moment he realized he was being hunted. It had started as a game for her, a test of her skills, but now she had to admit it had become more than that. She found herself intrigued by this human. His determination, his survival instinct, and his defiance were unlike anything she had encountered before. On the 6th day, Kai had caught a glimpse of Zira, hidden behind the trees. Her bright orange hair shone in the sun, and her eyes locked onto his, challenging him to continue. He had been prepared to fight, but the hesitation in her gaze made him wonder if he was just another victim of her hunt. Was he truly being tested? Or was this all part of something greater? Zira, however, was not interested in killing him yet. She wanted to see how far he would go. She had hunted many before, but none had shown the resilience that Kai possessed. She followed him, always just out of reach, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But as Kai sat by the river that morning, cleaning his wounds from the previous day's skirmish, something shifted in the air. He felt it before he saw it, a sudden, almost electric tension. He turned, his heart racing, but Zira was nowhere to be seen. For the first time, she had vanished completely. Was she gone? Or was she closer than he realized? Kai couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. His instincts, honed over years of survival, screamed at him to stay alert, but he had no sign of the huntress. For the first time in days, the jungle felt eerily silent. The usual sounds of chirping birds, rustling leaves, and distant animal calls were absent. It was as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. He stood up from the riverbank, scanning the surroundings with narrowed eyes. His hand instinctively reached for the hunting knife strapped to his side. The unease gnawed at him. He couldn't explain why, but something told him that this was no ordinary hunt. Zira wasn't just testing him, she was toying with him. As he made his way deeper into the jungle, the air grew thick with humidity. Sweat trickled down his face as he navigated through the dense foliage. The sunlight barely filtered through the thick canopy, leaving patches of shadow that seemed to dance with every breeze. Kai's grip tightened on his knife. Every crack of a twig beneath his feet, every movement in the underbrush, made his heart race faster. A sudden sound stopped him in his tracks. It was soft, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. He turned quickly, his eyes darting to the trees, the rocks, the shadows. There was nothing. Just the endless green of the jungle, stretching far beyond his sight. But then, he saw it. A flicker of movement in the distance, something orange. The color stood out against the deep green of the jungle. His pulse quickened. He knew it was Zira. The moment he spotted her, she was gone, vanishing back into the thick brush like a shadow. Kai's chest tightened. He was no longer just a prey, he was being hunted. Every step he took felt like it brought him closer to danger, and yet every step he took was also a step deeper into the unknown. The huntress was always one step ahead, and Kai was starting to realize that she knew this jungle far better than he ever would. Zira wasn't just a hunter. She was a master of her environment. Her movements were fluid, effortless, as though she had become one with the land itself. She had been watching him, waiting for him to make a mistake. And that mistake would come soon enough. Kai had no choice but to keep moving forward. He wasn't sure where the path would lead, but he couldn't afford to stop. His survival depended on outsmarting her, on figuring out her next move before she could make hers. Suddenly, a cold chill ran down his spine. He could feel it. Zara was near. He could hear the faintest rustle of leaves, the softest shift in the air. His breath hitched, and he turned just in time to see a flash of her glowing eyes through the trees. This time, though, something was different. Zara didn't rush in for the kill. Instead, she watched him, observing. For the first time, Kai saw something in her eyes that wasn't predatory, something closer to curiosity. He didn't have time to think about it. The moment passed, and she disappeared again, blending into the jungle like she was never there. But now Kai had a new fear. It wasn't just that he was being hunted, it was that he couldn't figure out why Zara hadn't finished it yet. Was she letting him live for a reason? Or was she just waiting for the perfect moment to strike? The jungle had changed. What was once a place of confusion and fear had become something more, something ominous. Kai could feel it in his bones. The air was thick, not just with humidity, but with something else. The atmosphere was heavy with an unspoken challenge. He was no longer just trying to survive. He was trying to outwit something far beyond what he had prepared for. As the day wore on, the jungle seemed to close in around him. Each step he took brought him deeper into unfamiliar territory. The trees grew thicker, their branches intertwining high above him, blocking out much of the light. Even the air felt colder, though the heat of the day hadn't yet begun to fade. The lightness in his chest from the first few days of survival was gone. Now only the tension remained. It felt as though Zara was everywhere, her presence watching from the shadows, like a distant storm gathering. Then the unmistakable sound of movement reached his ears. It was soft but deliberate, a purposeful rustling in the brush. His eyes darted to every direction, but there was no sign of her. His breath hitched as his instincts screamed at him to run. But there was nowhere to go. The jungle had become a labyrinth, and every turn he took felt like it led him deeper into her territory. Zara had been watching him. He could sense it. Her silent pursuit, always just behind him, was like a predator's waiting strike. She had grown comfortable in the hunt, confident in her ability to outmaneuver him at every turn. But there was something more now, something Kai had begun to sense over the past day or two. Zara wasn't just trying to break him physically. She was trying to break him mentally. A flicker of movement caught his eye again, but this time, it was closer. His pulse surged in his throat. She had made a mistake, or perhaps he had finally outsmarted her. He darted forward, ducking low under the thick branches that loomed like twisted fingers reaching for the sky. His breath came in shallow bursts as he ran, moving faster than ever before. Each step was driven by instinct, by the overwhelming need to escape. Suddenly, he was caught. His leg twisted around a thick vine that lay hidden in the underbrush. He stumbled, falling forward, his hands scraping against the dirt and leaves. His heart raced as he scrambled to his feet, but he could feel her now. Zara was near, and this time he was trapped. Before he could react, he heard it, a low, menacing growl from behind him. The sound sent a chill down his spine. He turned, his eyes widening as he saw her. Zara stood just a few feet away, her golden eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made his heart beat faster. She was no longer just a hunter. She was something more, something terrifying. Her presence filled the air, and her gaze seemed to pierce through him. She hadn't moved. She hadn't even made a sound as she approached, yet he had felt her every step. "You're not as clever as you think, human," Zara said, her voice smooth and dark. There was no mocking tone, no cruel edge. She was calm, as if this was all part of the game. Kai's throat tightened. "What do you want from me?" Zara tilted her head slightly, her orange hair shimmering in the dim light. I don't want anything from you. I simply want to see how far you'll go. You're different. I've never hunted something like you before. Kai's heart skipped a beat. The Huntress was intrigued by him. His mind raced. He had been so focused on surviving, on running, that he had missed something important. She wasn't hunting him for food. She wasn't hunting him to kill him. She was hunting him for sport. She took a slow step forward, her bare feet silent against the jungle floor. I wonder how long it will take for you to truly understand, she murmured. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, but it carried a weight that made him uneasy. Will you break under the pressure? Or will you surprise me and find a way to win? Kai swallowed hard. He wasn't sure if he had what it took to escape, to win, but he couldn't stop now. Not when he was so close to the truth. Zara's mind worked in ways he could hardly understand, and he needed to learn her patterns, her weaknesses before he became her prey for good. The jungle around them seemed to hold its breath. The game had only just begun, and the stakes were higher than Kai could ever have imagined. Kai woke to the sounds of the jungle again, but this time they were different. The constant hum of life around him, chirping insects, rustling leaves, seemed to carry a different weight. It was as if the entire jungle was alive with anticipation. Zara had played her hand, and now Kai understood that there was no simple escape. He had been chosen for this hunt, but he wasn't sure if he was merely a game piece or if he could somehow turn the tables. He sat up slowly, the ache of his muscles reminding him of the brutal days he had spent running and hiding. The skin on his arms was scraped and bruised from the harsh thorns and vines of the jungle. He had barely slept, and food had been scarce, but it didn't matter. He had learned enough in his years of survival to know that this was far from a normal battle. This was something different. Something much more dangerous. As the sun broke through the thick canopy above, Kai knew he couldn't waste time. He had to act. He had to find a way to turn Zara's game against her. But how? His mind wandered back to Zara's words from the night before. Will you break under the pressure? Or will you surprise me and find a way to win? She wanted him to crack. She wanted him to break. But Kai wasn't about to give her the satisfaction. He wasn't just fighting for his survival anymore. He was fighting for something more. He was fighting to prove that he was more than just a target. Kai moved quietly through the jungle, trying to keep a low profile. He knew he couldn't outrun Zara. She was faster, stronger, and had the advantage of the jungle on her side. But there was one thing that he had that she didn't, his ability to think, to adapt. The human mind was unpredictable, and Kai was beginning to realize that if he could use his wits, he might just stand a chance. As the day wore on, he set up small traps, nothing too elaborate, just enough to slow her down. He wasn't trying to kill her. He was trying to outsmart her. He had to make her think he was a bigger threat than he actually was. The mind games had begun. The hours passed, and the heat of the day made the jungle feel suffocating. Kai's eyes darted to every movement, every shadow. He was on edge, but his focus was sharp. Then, in the distance, he saw a flicker of movement. He froze. It was her. Zara. She was stalking him again, her fiery hair glinting in the sunlight. But this time, she wasn't as close as before. She was just out of reach, watching from a distance, perhaps testing him to see if he would react. Kai took a slow breath. He didn't have to run, not yet. He could play this game too. He stayed low, keeping to the shadows as best as he could. He didn't want to be seen. The longer Zara kept her distance, the more it played into his hands. He needed time to think. Time to make his next move. Zara's golden eyes gleamed as she watched him. She had sensed his awareness. She knew he was preparing for something. And that made her smile, though it was a faint knowing smile, one that sent a shiver down Kai's spine. She didn't mind. This wasn't about winning in the traditional sense. For her, this was a test of endurance, of intelligence, of willpower. She wanted to see how far he would go, how far he would push her. Zira was testing him again, and Kai couldn't help but feel a strange connection. Not an alliance, but an understanding. He knew what she was thinking, and in some way, she knew what he was thinking too. It was like a silent battle of minds. With a sudden burst of movement, Zira closed the distance between them, faster than Kai had anticipated. She leaped from the shadows with the speed of a jungle cat, her eyes locked onto him. She had caught him off guard. In that split second, Kai did the only thing he could think of. He grabbed a nearby vine and swung it towards her, hoping to slow her down. It wasn't much, but it gave him a precious moment to react. The vine slapped against her, but it wasn't enough to stop her. Zira dodged with an effortless grace that made Kai's heart race. She was close now, only a few feet away, and he could hear the sound of her breath, steady and calm as ever. "Impressive, Zira," said her voice, calm and almost amused, but not enough. She raised her hand ready to strike, and Kai's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The moment he had been dreading, but then something unexpected happened. Zira paused. For a moment, the jungle went silent. The tension in the air grew, thick with anticipation. Zara's gaze softened ever so slightly, her expression unreadable. "Why haven't you run?" she asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Kai's pulse raced, but he held her gaze. "Because this isn't just a hunt for me, it's something more. And I'm not going to make it easy for you." Zara tilted her head, intrigued. It wasn't what she had expected him to say. Perhaps she had underestimated him more than she realized. Kai's heart pounded in his chest as he stood there, facing Zira. The jungle around them seemed to fade away, the tension between them thickening the air. For the first time since this hunt began, he felt an odd sense of clarity. Zira was no longer just a predator. She was someone who understood the game as much as he did. But the difference was that she had been playing it much longer than him. And he knew she had the power to end it at any moment. Zira studied him, her golden eyes piercing through him as if trying to read his thoughts. She was calm, but there was something more to her than just a hunter's instinct. She was intrigued, perhaps even impressed. She hadn't expected this level of resistance. She hadn't expected a human to challenge her in this way. "You're not like the others," she murmured, her voice quiet but full of intent. "Most give up after a few days, they break. But you fight." Kai swallowed, still gripping the vine tightly in his hand, though he knew it wouldn't be enough to stop her if she decided to strike. "I told you," he said, his voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "I'm not like the others." Zara's expression shifted just slightly, a spark of something in her eyes that Kai couldn't quite place. She had stopped advancing, but she was still dangerously close. He could see the muscle in her jaw tense. She was thinking. She was analyzing. "I don't understand you," she said softly, almost to herself. "Why do you fight so hard for? Survival? What is it about your kind that makes you resist so fiercely?" Kai didn't have an answer to that, not a clear one. He wasn't sure what made him so different. Maybe it was just human nature, the instinct to keep fighting no matter how hopeless it seemed. Maybe it was something deeper, something that told him he couldn't just give in. "Not now. I fight," he said slowly, "because giving up isn't an option. I fight because I have something worth living for." Zara's eyes flickered with something. Was it surprise? Perhaps it was respect. For the first time since their encounter began, she lowered her hand, the one that had been poised to strike. The decision to end the game wasn't hers yet, not when there was still so much to learn. "You don't understand," she said, her voice softer now, almost contemplative. "In my world, survival is the only thing that matters. I was raised to be a hunter. I was born to kill. That's all I've ever known." Kai stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He hadn't expected her to open up, to reveal any part of herself. But here she was, standing in front of him, an alien, a hunter, but perhaps just maybe something more. Then why keep playing this game? He asked, taking a step closer. Why not just finish it and be done with it? Zara's lips curved slightly into a smirk. Because I want to see if you can make it to the end. I want to know how far you can go. Can you outsmart me? Can you survive against the odds? Can you break me in a way no one else ever has? Kai shook his head, a slight smile playing at the corner of his mouth. You're starting to care. You're not just hunting me anymore. You're testing me. You want to know if I can beat you. You want to know if I can change things. Zara stepped back, her eyes narrowing as she regarded him, a mix of curiosity and wariness flickering in her gaze. Perhaps, she said. Her tone low, but it's not just that. There's something about you, Kai. Something I can't quite figure out. She turned away, disappearing into the jungle for a moment. Kai felt a pang of confusion and unease. Had she just let him off the hook? Or was this part of her strategy? Was she testing him again? The jungle around him felt quieter now, the tension in the air shifting as if the earth itself was waiting for the next move. Kai stood motionless, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. The hunt had changed him, made him more than just a survivor. It had opened a door to something new, something dangerous, but he couldn't stop now. He had come too far, and the end was in sight. He didn't know what was waiting for him, but he was ready to face it. Just as he began to move, the unmistakable sound of footsteps broke the silence. Zara was back. There's one last thing you need to understand, she said, her voice cold and sharp once more. You think you're in control of this game. But you're wrong. I set the rules, and I decide when it's over. Kai braced himself. He knew what was coming next. The final test. Zara was ready to push him to his limit. And this time, there would be no more games. The jungle had become a battleground one, where the lines between predator and prey blurred with every passing moment. Kai had survived longer than Zara had expected, longer than anyone before him had. The physical toll had worn him down, but it was his mind that kept him moving. It was the last remaining thing he had in this twisted game. Zara had been watching him more closely than ever, and it was clear that she was no longer certain of the outcome. The game had shifted from a simple hunt to something much more complicated. Her challenge had evolved, and now she wasn't sure what to think anymore. The human she had been chasing for a week was different. He wasn't just a target. He was more. He had outwitted her at every turn, pushed her boundaries in ways that no one had before. And now, they both knew that the end was near. Kai's body ached with exhaustion as he moved through the dense underbrush, but he refused to stop. The adrenaline from the past days kept him going, and there was one thought in his mind: survive. He had made it this far, and he couldn't stop now. The stakes were higher than ever before. His steps were measured, cautious. He had learned to trust his instincts, and right now, those instincts screamed at him to stay low, to remain hidden. He knew that Zara was somewhere nearby. The jungle had fallen silent once again. The wind had stilled. Even the animals were holding their breath. In that moment, Kai knew this was it. This was the moment where everything would be decided. It was no longer just about survival. It was about proving that he could withstand Zara's relentless pursuit, that he could rise above the odds and show her that he wasn't just prey. A rustle in the trees broke the silence, and Kai's heart raced. Zara had come for him once more. He turned quickly, his eyes scanning the shadows, the underbrush. He saw a flash of orange Zara's fiery hair. She was close, but this time, something was different. She wasn't coming in for the kill. She was waiting. Her golden eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, everything went still. Kai could see the conflict in her gaze. She was no longer just a hunter. She was a warrior, torn between the desire to win and the respect she now held for him. "You've done well," Zara said, her voice low and almost reverent. "I didn't expect you to last." This long, Kai didn't speak. He just kept his eyes on her, feeling the weight of her words. She wasn't here to finish him off. No, this was something else. Zara stepped forward, her movements slow and deliberate, as though she were testing his reaction. She didn't make a move to strike, though he could see the muscles in her arms flex as if she were ready to pounce at any moment. "You've outwitted me," she said, the slightest hint of a smile touching her lips. "No human has ever done that before." The words were like a challenge, but Kai didn't flinch. He had nothing left to prove. He had done it. He had survived. But then, Zara did something that no one, not even Kai, had expected. She stopped. "I didn't want this to end like this," she admitted, her voice softer now, almost vulnerable. "But I've learned something from you, human. I've learned that maybe there's more to survival than just killing. Maybe, just maybe, there's another way." Kai's breath caught in his throat. Was this a trick? Was she about to kill him after all? But no, there was no deception in her eyes. She had made her decision. "You're free," she said, her voice firm. "I won't hunt you anymore." Kai stood frozen, the weight of her words sinking in. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. This had been more than just a hunt. It had been a test of strength, of mind, and now Zara was acknowledging something that he had always known: survival wasn't just about winning. It was about understanding. Zara turned away, her figure blending into the jungle once more. "Go, leave," she called back to him, her voice fading. "And remember, you were the one who changed the game." Kai stood there for a long time, the jungle now eerily quiet around him. He had survived. But more than that, he had changed Zara. He had made her question the very nature of what she had been taught to believe. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light across the jungle, Kai knew that his journey wasn't over. It had just begun.